All right. Hopefully, everyone is doing as well as they possibly can during the pandemic and stressful time right now. I get it. So, just try to uh, keep doing the best that you can for the course. If you need anything, just let me know. I'm here, happy to help in any way I can. So, week 7, we're gonna move into post process. So we're going to kind of move out of the cognitive and the post or writing process movement, but that doesn't mean they go away. I think it's important to remember that expressivism, cognitivism, even current traditional pedagogy and formalism, they're still with us today. There's residual values from many of those uh, theories and pedagogies. So it just means that that particular theory alone didn't solve all the composition's problems. Cognitive theory led us to believe that people that couldn't do certain things with writing had cognitive deficiencies, but that's obviously not true. Just to give you a quick example outside of writing studies, but still part of writing studies. I remember taking an anthropology class with a very famous anthropologist who spent majority of his career validating oral culture and basically demonstrating like the intellectual efficiency of oral cultures and what they were able to do without writing. And you'll see, or you saw in that Micro's takedown of cognitive theory, you saw how he pointed out that just because you can write and read doesn't mean that you have some intellectual capacity beyond a human that just practices orality and orality. So something to remember. That doesn't mean that writing and print culture isn't capable of doing things that oral cultures couldn't. It just means that intellectual capacity, cognition, they're not really dependent on linguistics or language, so to speak, or your intellectual capacity. Although making knowledge, right, certainly takes place with language and how we see the world filtered through language is definitely important to think about in post-process theory. So I guess the three main terms you can think about during this unit and the rest of the course: post-process, social epistemic rhetoric, and post-structuralism. So I'll start with post-structuralism, which is basically the theory that we all use language to make sense of the world, to create knowledge, to socially construct our identities, our realities, and that more or less groups of people use language very specifically to construct identities and realities that are specific to those communities. That doesn't mean those communities can't communicate outside of their personal communities. Certainly you belong to more than just your family community, right? You belong to a bunch of different discourse communities, and they all use language differently, including the university. And that's kind of at the heart of social constructivism and social epistemic rhetoric, which social epistemic rhetoric basically says we use language to make knowledge, epistemic meaning, knowledge making. So again, we people, right, communities of people use language in certain ways that form knowledge, and then we agree on that. That's why certain communities value certain evidences and certain ways of knowing the world over other ways, and that's why certain communities will clash. Social epistemic rhetoric kind of demonstrates how certain communities will use language in certain ways to make knowledge, and then they'll privilege that. And any communities that don't do that, same kind of structure and form are looked down upon. So you'll have an opportunity to investigate that this week with your readings. Berlin is a really good reading. Make sure you read Berlin relatively carefully because he gives you a summary of cognitivism and expressivism again, and kind of explains why they don't work. Or, not that they don't work, but individually, right? They don't solve all of composition's questions and concerns. And there's reasons why. He explains that as he moves into the socio-epistemic rhetoric definition and explanation, which is where we are, today. This post-process theory, which is you can't really teach people how to write because writing is always different all the time. It's always being controlled by political, social, cultural forces. Every writer is different. They come from different backgrounds. They learn differently. They move in and out of different discourse communities and write for different communities that, again, shape their knowledge and ways of knowing, which, again, shapes how they write. So, just this idea that you could teach writing or that there is a universal process, it's not true, right? They did everything they possibly could for the past 100 years to try to prove that, and it all basically ended with post-process theory. But that doesn't mean you can't teach students about writing or that having a process or that there is a process. That's still relevant and important. There's just not a universal process to teach. Again, post-process focuses on all of these other forces. And this is kind of where things get a little messy because we're still kind of in this theoretical frame, the field is. We're still all kind of operating from a post-process social epistemic, well, not all of us, but a majority of the progressive field uses those frames now to think about writing. So you see a lot of feminist composition scholarship that is built around social epistemic rhetoric, post-structuralism, etc. So this week you're going to read about post-process. I think the Bralish piece is probably the best article to read carefully and slowly to get a better understanding of post-process theory. And then the other pieces will just give you, a little broader perspective of post-process. And then, like I said, next week we'll start to move into how this social epistemic, social, cultural, political way of looking at writing manifests itself in the field, in the discipline, in the classroom. All right, so again, this week you're going to learn more about post-process, and you'll have opportunity to investigate a lot of really cool questions, I think, that ask you to think about all the forces in your life that have shaped your writing and your ways of knowing through writing. So I look forward to reading your discussions this week. And again, of course, if you have any questions, if you want to talk face-to-face, just let me know. Have a good week, and I will see you next week.